This is Tyrese Halliburton, and you're listening to Setting the Pace.
Look, setting the pace with Alex and Facci. Alex and Facci, Alex and Allison. If I put our jacks in the paint, how you gonna stop me? How you gonna stop me? We can go head to head. Call out your top three, call out your top three. Look at the switch from Duarte. Now that boy got three. We got Halliburton running point. This is the Benedict for the shot. If anybody gon' come in the post, then we got Jalen Smith for the block. Setting the pace, going to the top. Setting the pace, going to the top. This is your number one podcast. Sweeping every team, we gon' need a mop. Smooth.
Ladies and gentlemen, the boys are back, and we are here to talk all things Indiana Pacers as we get excited for this upcoming offseason. We're doing top 10 trade targets for this offseason. That does not necessarily mean that it's going to be realistic. It could be unrealistic, but these are guys that we want to see in the blue and gold that could maybe be available. Facci, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing great. I'm excited for this activity today. You know, I love a good mystery box. Anything could happen. I always tend to try and stay on the realistic side because I've had my heart broken before with our off seasons where maybe we walk away with Corey Craig instead of someone a little bit bigger or Doug McDermott. But this is what you got to believe. And in an off season like this could be our biggest off season yet.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's funny because you say that, but I remember our last one we did at the trade deadline.
I
you
knew
were
what you were going to say.
Jaden McDaniels.
I know. And you know what? Stay tuned, Alex, because I'm not done with him yet.
Oh my God. Okay. Well, that seems very unrealistic, but I can't really say that knowing some of the guys I have on my list, but I will say you just said that yours are very realistic, or you try to keep it that way. I'm giving people the forewarning. Mine might not all be realistic, but I'm going big name hunting this year, Facci. That's what I'm calling this title of my episode, for me anyway. Big name hunting. If that doesn't get you excited, I don't know what will. But I just want to say real quick before we start out, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm rocking this Indiana Pacers jersey. I tweeted about it. Want to give a shout out to our guy Rooster, aka Evan, for hooking us up with custom jerseys. Now, Facci, yours still hasn't come in the mail yet. Might be, because you move every 6 months somewhere new.
That I do.
Might have something to do with it.
Cannot wait for mine. I'm feeling left out right now. But Rooster, shout out to you. Really, really appreciate it. Can't wait to rock mine. And Alex looks awesome if you're watching this on YouTube right now.
Yeah.
If you're not, that's exactly why you got to go over to YouTube so you know what we're talking about.
Yeah, I'll try to turn around here a little bit so you can see it in the back. My mic's kind of in the way. So it's got my last name on it and everything. So they're pretty sweet. And I never really have bought a jersey in a long time, Facci. I just don't want to spend the money on it. So and usually when I go to games, I don't wear jerseys. It's just not my thing. I just wear a button-down shirt or a t-shirt or something and go like that. But I don't know if I should rock this one or not, or if I should get it framed and put it on the wall back here so there's at least something kind of cool in my background. But we'll figure that out later. But Facci, we're here to talk trade targets, so I'll let you start things off with your number 10, and we'll work our way down to number 1.
All right, number 10. Now, I'm going to be honest. This is not the sexiest name out there because it was hard to find 10 guys that I felt that the Pacers could realistically land in a trade. So starting at number 10, it's Kelly Olynyk. Now, this is a guy that's given good minutes pretty much everywhere he's gone, especially in that 20-game sample size with Houston, where it looked like he was going to develop into a different player. But anyway, for this past season for the Jazz, just a good overall player. Gave him 12.5 points, about 5 rebounds, shot 50% from the field, 40% from three, 85% from the free throw line. He's entering the final year of his contract at $12.2 million. I believe the Jazz, a team that really wanted to rebuild, would very much give him up for not too much. And I feel like he's someone who's always been at least reliable or consistent. And especially if you're talking about from a shooting 3 standpoint, that's something that Jalen Smith really struggled with this year. And Isaiah Jackson, obviously has not developed that part of his game yet.
Interesting. Kelly Olynyk was not a name I was expecting to hear because we already have so many bigs. So
we do.
That to me was a bit of a surprise. So if you're watching on YouTube and you saw my face, that is why I responded the way that I did, is because it was kind of surprising to hear that name. So not surprised by the level of talent, just because I know Facci maybe have attacked this a little bit differently than I did. But I've got two players here for my number 10, and it's a little bit of a cheat code, but I'm doing it this way because they're both in similar situations and in terms of where their contract is and how much it is. And so that is number one. This is a name that was brought up a few weeks ago when you couldn't make it, and Chris Weech joined me on the show, one of our fan of the weeks, and he said Tobias Harris. Tobias Harris is a name that is an expiring contract with like $30 million, 30 plus million.
37 million. Yes. It was on my honorable mention.
Yeah, so I know it's a lot, but this is like at the bottom of the barrel. Like, okay, you go for all these other names and they're not available. What happens with the Philadelphia 76ers? Does James Harden leave? What do they do with this roster? Do they try to flip Tobias Harris and get some pieces out of it? I don't know. He's a name that I put on my list now. He's making, not like you said, $37 million next year, but 14.7 points, 5.7 rebounds, and 2.5 assists this year. That's pretty good. Now, the other name is going to make every single Pacer fan cringe, Facci, because he too has a very expensive expiring contract.
Yeah, like I know.
And he is someone that was formerly or recently in rumors to come to the Pacers, and that's Gordon Hayward.
I knew it.
And this is why I had him at number 10, because I said I'm going big name hunting. And I actually think you could probably get Gordon Hayward and then not cost you a ton of money, because he's viewed as a negative asset by a lot of people. Yes. So very similar numbers to Tobias, 14.7 points, 4.3 rebounds, and 4.1 assists. He played in 50 games this year, which is, I think, a pretty good number for him considering where the team was at. They play 82. He played 50 of the 82. I think with going after a guy like this can kind of be like your David West signing that you saw happen. You need a veteran that can do a bunch of different things and really kind of be that start. I think he can. I think he's still good enough to start, Facci. I still think he's got that level of talent. The contract's too much, obviously, but you go into it knowing, okay, we're paying him for this year, but we're going to bring him back on a cheaper contract after this season. And that's kind of where I'm looking at it from this standpoint, because I think Gordon Hayward really is a nice secondary playmaker in that starting lineup. I think he can play the 3 or the 4, depending on what they do in the draft, what they do with the rest of their free agency and trades. I believe in him as a player, but I don't necessarily think you have to give up the bag for him. So, I think they're supposed to be projected around $25 million in cap space. So could you give up a combination of Daniel Tice and something to get him here? Would that make sense? Do you do that? I mean, it's just, I'm not going to go into trades right now because we're not at that point, but I'm not saying you're giving up key players to get him. I think you maybe throw on one of your picks that you have, the Cavs or Celtics pick, because you can't take on all these young players with the intentions of re-signing him in the offseason to a much more team-friendly deal, probably in the $10 to $15 million range, because I would not be paying him more than that.
That last point is exactly why I took him off my list, because I looked at it and I went, man, how would the Pacers make this work? Do they do like is it like a Buddy Hield and Tice? Is it like Tice and someone else? And yeah, whatever it is, you get crafty with it. And then I just thought, you know what, this guy's only got 1 year remaining on his deal, and I really do think that he's wanted to come to the Pacers numerous times. So that's why I elected to pull him off the list. But Tobias Harris, he was the true honorable mention on here. It was just me thinking, how do I get to 37 million? Once again, is that Buddy, maybe TJ McConnell, a little bit more? Harris, if you look at his stats, they'll never justify what he's making, because he's truly about the 4th option there behind Embiid, Harden, Tyrese Maxey. So it's like, I get that, but those are two names I very much debated. You can't really go wrong with them, but I'm going to wait and see if the Pacers look to pursue Hayward in free agency.
Yeah, they definitely could do that and go that route instead. It's just a little bit easier, I think, to kind of see what you have. And if it doesn't work out, I still think that him being an expiring contract with that much money, same for Tobias, you could probably trade them by the trade deadline as well. And who knows? You never know. You might get their stock up a little bit higher because of the question marks that are still there with what Charlotte's doing.
Yeah, no, very much. And you guys got to remember, Gordon was ready to take a hometown discount years ago before Charlotte came in with that $120 million offer. Yeah. So, I mean, the Pacers, you can only take so much of a discount when, MJ's throwing the bag at you. But I still think that marriage is not over, or that flirtation is not over yet between those two teams. Right. Next, number 9 on my list, not another, this name's not going to blow you out, but Kyle Anderson. I like what he does. I respect what he does. And to be honest, I think I gain more respect from him for standing up to Rudy Gobert.
Yeah, him and Miles Turner would have a lot in common.
Yes, they would. like he plays the game well. He defends well. I love his length. He could score. He could rebound. He's become a better distributor. He's 29 years old, so I feel like at that point he would be our veteran at a position of need. And he brings toughness, a little bit of chippiness. So I do think that Kyle Anderson is someone that could be had given, the books for Minnesota right now.
No, I actually don't dislike Kyle Anderson at all. I think he was a player we talked about last offseason going after to get in free agency. So
I've liked him.
He's a pretty solid player that does a lot of little things well. He's just a very smart player. And I actually like the fact that he holds players accountable.
I like
it. You might need someone like that, especially if you do move on from some of your veterans that you have on this team. You can add another veteran that might actually give you some quality playing time. So don't hate the Kyle Anderson pick. I know we got to get you out of here in about 30-ish minutes, so we got to make this a little bit faster, Facci. So I'll move on to my number 9, and that is from Chicago, Patrick Williams. This is a name we've talked about quite a bit before on this show, and I think that he's probably dipped a little bit in terms of people being highly intrigued by him. I still think there's intrigue, but obviously he's not put up the big numbers yet. He hasn't had that breakout year, and what Chicago wants to do is they want to try to win now based off what their exit interviews have said. So, that to me is like, okay, we'll see what happens with Chicago in the offseason, because Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, they've got some tough decisions there to see how they want to continue building this roster. But if the Pacers could somehow get their hands on Patrick Williams, I think they have to do it, and they have to take a swing on this guy because, 2020 draft, right? It feels right to just continue to add more players from that draft class. Played 82 games this year, Facci. You can't beat that. 10.2 points per game, 4.0 rebounds, and 1.2 assists. So made the all-rookie team his first year. I think that there is still some untapped potential there, and what we've seen so far from players that have been brought over to the Pacers that haven't had like a big opportunity. I guess he's had a big opportunity in Chicago. It's just been different. I just feel like Carlisle might be able to maximize his role a little bit with this team.
Dare I say to be continued, because I like me some Patrick Williams.
Okay.
So, we'll stay tuned on that. We'll be getting to him shortly. But
Okay.
as we look at a scene where, they need to blow it up or make some changes, I'm sticking with Chicago. And I'm actually going with a different player. It's
Can I
Alex
guess?
Caruso.
Yeah, that's what I was going to guess.
And here's the thing. You're probably saying, Facci, we already have so many guards. What do we do? I get it. Look, you even have McConnell and Nembhard as backup guards. Alex Caruso is going to make an all-defensive team. He's probably going to be on the second team. He only plays around 23 minutes. But this guy brings it night in, night out. He's been doing it for years. And when you look at Chicago, Lonzo Ball, unfortunately, he's rotting on the books over there. They need help at point guard play. They need to make good decisions. Vucevic, free agent. It's like, I think that Caruso could be expendable. And I was digging up some stats. His defensive box plus minus was 3.4, which was second best in the NBA. The Bulls actually give up about 7 more points per 100 possessions when Caruso's off the court. This is someone who's given you 1.5 steals. There's 1.7 the year before that. He's going to hustle night in, night out. And I think that that's someone, when the Pacers need help defensively, having Andrew Nembhard and Alex Caruso perhaps coming off the bench would just be like a really good defensive guard combination. So I'm intrigued with Caruso.
I was a little bit distracted there, Facci, because while you were talking, breaking news, the Indiana Pacers have won the tiebreaker over the Washington Wizards.
Oh my God!
So they will be the 7th pick in the draft if teams do not jump them from behind. So they have the same amount of odds as Washington still, but that worked for them. And I believe, if I'm reading correctly, the Spurs beat the Rockets in terms of their coin flip. So the Pacers will have their the 32nd pick as well. So winning both tiebreakers here is huge for the Pacers. I'm trying to confirm this, but we'll get back to that in a second. I do like the idea of Alex Caruso, Facci. I do think that's interesting. I'm confused here. They might not have got the second round pick, so let's not say that for sure. But they definitely did beat the Wizards. They did. So the other one, I'm getting confirmation now. The Rockets won the coin flip, so the Pacers will not have the 32nd pick in the draft.
Okay, all right.
But they still took out your Wizards in the coin flip. And you know what? We're calling him your Wizards today.
Yeah, whatever you want to do. You know what?
I do whatever I want to do anyway.
Yeah,
You know,
just go for it. Whatever. Here's what I'm going to say. Alex, within about the last 30 seconds, I just went through a series of emotions. I got goosebumps. I felt that my eyes started to tear up. Then you took the 32nd overall pick from me. I don't even know what to feel right now other than lucky number 7. I said it all along. What Jermaine O'Neal has given this franchise,
Oh my
we are about
gosh.
to get back.
lots of injuries.
Yes, lots of injuries. But you know what? Having the 7th overall pick, we talked about the movement on the 7th overall pick the last few years. That pick jumps into the top 4 year after year, and we were due some good fortune. It hurts to lose the 32nd overall pick, but you know what? I feel good about having the 7th best odds.
Yeah, I mean, we still get that second round pick. It just falls to later. So, with that being said, I'm going to move over to my number 8 quickly here, Facci. And I'm sorry for the interruption, everybody, but I think it was worth it. So,
Yes, it was.
I'm going with DeAndre Hunter from Atlanta. This is a guy that just re-signed with the Hawks. He's going to be an unrestricted free agent in 2027. But we know there's a lot of stuff going on there right now in Atlanta, and they're talking about maybe trading Trae Young. So, how else does this roster shake out? There's probably another name on this roster that I think a lot of people have their eye on potentially for the Pacers to go after, and we'll see if they're maybe on your list or not moving forward, Facci. But I think that DeAndre Hunter is a little bit under the radar still at this point. I think he's another guy similar to Patrick Williams you go out and trade for. Maybe he's a little bit better than you think, but I love the contract extension he got because it's not like totally too much, but it's a fair price for him. And we talked about him for a while, number 4th overall pick in the 2019 draft. So I like him a lot, and I'm excited to see what his career looks like. But I think giving a different role, he could probably thrive a little bit better because Atlanta, it just seems like a very weird fit.
Ooh, I'm trying to bite my tongue so hard because I love me some DeAndre Hunter, and I got him coming up. Alex,
Okay.
So for everybody listening, the specifics on the contract, it's 4 years, $90 million, which is going to be a steal years from now. You're talking about a player that is locked up for that contract extension is about to start. It's going to be between $20 to $24 million per year, which will be the going rate for a player of his caliber. So I think it's an awesome deal for anyone that's going to be able to trade for him if they can, and you should not hesitate because DeAndre Hunter, I do think his best basketball is in front of him.
Okay, Facci, then let's move on. Number 7, what you got?
Maybe this is a little bit of a man crush. I have always loved this player, and it's Bobby Portis. Now, look, Bobby Portis, I've always been a big Bobby Portis fan ever since he's coming out of Arkansas. In that draft class, he declared himself the best player in that draft. It was a bold move, but I love that self-confidence. This guy's probably going to finish 3rd or 4th in 6th man of the year voting. He averaged basically nearly a double-double off the bench on a winning championship caliber team. He's already won a ring in which he contributed very solidly for. He shoots the 3-ball well. He defends well. I think he'd be awesome playing alongside Miles Turner, and he torched the Pacers for 21 points, 11 boards, 4 assists earlier this season. Bobby Portis, a guy that I don't know if he would really be available, but if Milwaukee really wants to make a decision to upgrade, I think he's someone that could be expendable.
Yeah, I mean, Bobby Portis is a really fun player to cheer for. And I will say this, being at that game in Milwaukee and just hearing the fans chanting, Bobby, Bobby.
They love him.
Dude, it was insane. Like, between him and Giannis, I don't know which one they like more. I'm kidding, obviously. But the fans love Bobby Portis, and I think Bobby Portis is a name that fans here were interested in when he was in the draft. I know that I had a little bit of intrigue with Bobby Portis. I think that's the year we took Miles, if I'm not mistaken.
It was 2015.
Okay, yeah. So it all runs together. Can you believe that was 8 years ago? That's really wild to think about. But
time's flying.
I know. So Bobby Portis, I wouldn't be opposed to that, Facci. I think he does a lot of nice things well. But is he more of a bench guy? That's a big question. Do we think he's a starter on this team? Maybe. Does he brings toughness. That's for dang sure. So I like Bobby Portis. He's not on my list. Another guy that probably will be on your list later. I'm just going to guess. From New York, he's torched the Pacers the last 2 times they played him. It's Obi Toppin coming in at number 7 for me, Facci. Restricted free agent 2024. I've loved what I've seen from Obi Toppin, and I thought he looked really good in that first playoff game, that 3 that he hit in the corner. I said, man, they got to free Obi Toppin. Why are they not freeing Obi Toppin? Because Julius Randle is still playing great basketball, and I just think the Pacers have to pounce on this and see if there's a way they can kind of steal Obi Toppin from New York, because New York, they're going to be going big name hunting, bigger than I'm going right now. and he could be a throw-in piece, but I think Obi Toppin could be some of the Pacers' value and look at, because my goodness, did he show the Pacers what he can do playing against them.
Alex, I think I'm in love. And let's just say I got this guy towards the top of my list. Oh, yeah.
Obi Toppin.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Wow.
So I
okay.
am.
This is
Yeah, I did it. I did it. And I'm very intrigued by Obi Toppin. I've been intrigued. And yes, he did torch the Pacers this year. 32 points, 34 points towards the end of the year. I mean, he was doing it all. He had at least 6 assists in both games. I mean, he was just making it happen. Free OB. But for the next on my list, it's
just going to throw this up here real quick. I got my box of Cheez-Its because Facci's cheesy. Boom.
That is me.
Goes perfect. Those two together right there.
Hey,
this segment is brought to you by Cheez-Its, whichever one you like.
Exactly. Next on my list is someone that you mentioned earlier. That's Patrick Williams. Look, Chicago's got to blow it up. And while I don't think he's taken off as much as they hoped, because I felt like 2 years ago they probably had him as like an untouchable, he's still only 21 years old. He can defend well. He's an efficient shooter. I think that he's gotten better. 47% from the field, about 42% from three. He's giving you a block and a steal per game. I feel like he fits the Pacers' young core very well. You got to remember, the Bulls do not own their first-round pick. That's going to go to the Magic. And I just feel like at this point, what else are they going to do? How do you upgrade this team unless you make a move? And Patrick Williams, I think, would be a player if the Pacers could acquire. I do think that he could take off.
Yeah, the one thing that's really tough about looking at trades for the Pacers is just like, what do they give up to get these players, and what do they want? Like, what do other teams want? So that's why it's like when I hear all these names and I'm like wanting to go after, it's like, man, I'm kind of worried you're going to throw a lot of picks probably at someone's way, and I just don't know. Like, I like Patrick Williams. I had him at 9. How many picks am I willing to give up for him? That's a big question. How many players am I willing to give up? I don't think he's that big of a deal, but like, it'll be interesting because I'm trying to think like what makes the Bulls better that we have that they don't. You know, does it make sense to give up something that we really don't want to give up for him? I don't know about that. So it's tough. You know what I'm saying? But we're not talking about trades. We're just talking about trade targets. So this is just people you're throwing out there. And one guy that I'm going to go ahead and say is probably pretty unrealistic, but I would love to. I would love to just see the Pacers make an aggressive offer for him, and that's Andrew Wiggins. This is someone I've been pretty impressed with since he's been on Golden State. I'm curious what they're going to do with Jonathan Kuminga. Draymond Green's coming up. Klay Thompson free agency's coming up. How did they go about rebuilding this team with Steph as the main guy? Do they continue to bring back guys that have played with Steph for all this time? And that's Dre and Klay. And how does that affect their salary cap and how much they're willing to spend? They just extended Jordan Poole, I believe. So they've got a lot of money they owe to a lot of guys. And I'm just curious because the Pacers will have some cap space. Could they move off of Andrew Wiggins? I don't think it would be a smart move for them because of how well he's played, but there was some weirdness that happened this season where he didn't play for a while. Nobody knows what happens. He just shows back up and he's ready to go for the Kings series. And I'm like, okay, what's going on here? So I personally think it stinks that Andrew Wiggins wasn't able to play the full season, but he just signed that extension too, Facci. He's got a player option in 2027. So you'd have him under contract for a while. I think this is someone you have to consider looking at if you're the Pacers and trying to target a small forward that's got championship experience.
Wiggins has turned his career around. He got that championship education, the last few years, because it's almost comical. I remember you and I a couple of years ago being like, I mean, would you take on Wiggins if it meant that we got, their first round pick? And like, how many picks would you need? And it's just like, he's such a different player now. And he is playing winning basketball that it was a big difference. If Golden State could not get Wiggins back for the playoffs, I think everyone was ready to count them out. So I do love me some Wiggins. I don't know what it would cost, but Golden State's got some decisions to make. Now,
for sure. Let's go ahead and take a quick break, Facci. When we come back, we will jump into our top 5.
The next player on my list is one that you mentioned, and I said I would come back to him. That's DeAndre Hunter. Look, you got to love some DeAndre Hunter because he's a two-way player. He's fresh off that 4-year, $90 million extension. It's about to kick in. So, if you're going to trade for him, it's not going to be like, oh, this is a risk. No, this is a player who's just 25 years old. The Hawks for the last few years have been rumored about, needing a shakeup. I think that Hunter has battled injuries, so I don't think he's played his best basketball, but he's got the ideal wing length that you're looking for. He'll take on the toughest matchup. offensively on any given night, and he'll give you 15 plus points per game. So I think that the money that he's making, that 4 years, $90 million, 2 years from now, once the salary cap expands, or I believe it's 2 years from now, that contract is going to look very favorable. And if the Pacers can go for him, I would definitely be on board for it.
Yeah, I mean, I've already expressed my interest in him, so I don't think I need to say too much. I'll just move on to my number 5, and this is someone I think could be potentially available. We'll see what happens up north, but Toronto, they could be a team ready to make some significant changes to their roster. We've already heard that Nick Nurse might be on the outs. We have yet to hear that officially be reported, but there's been rumblings that he might have interest in going to Houston and coaching that team, so we'll see what happens. But this guy is an unrestricted free agent after next season in 2024, making $37.8 million next year. All-star Pascal Siakam. Pascal Siakam, I think, is a terrific player, Facci. I think that he would make a lot of sense for this Pacers team. You want to add some defense to it. You want to add some playmaking to it. You want to add just an all-around guy that can get to the basket. I think this is a guy that's a really good basketball player and probably doesn't get the flowers that he deserves because of, Toronto's coverage. I would say it's a little bit under the radar comparatively to the other major markets in the NBA, but we've seen him be a part of a championship team with Kawhi Leonard and that group that won it with Toronto back in 2019. So I personally think Pascal Siakam is someone that the Pacers should look to target. The problem here is, what do they want? And does he re-sign with the team after? That's the only question mark you have. And that's why I think it's a little bit risky. And that's why I don't have him higher than 5. But I think right there, middle of the pack, this is someone you have to look at because I think he could drastically change his team's overall record.
Look, that's someone that I would have loved to have had on my list. I just didn't know if the Pacers would be able to acquire him without actually giving up the farm. Because very, very talented player. I just started to think, after what we give up, what are we left with? And then could you then re-sign him? It was like, that's like a move that it would be unprecedented for the Pacers to really go all in, it felt like. So if we could get him, I mean, this is an extremely talented player. But yeah, great point. And when you mentioned, what would we have to give up? What are we left? Will he re-sign? So it's scary.
Marks.
Yeah, a lot of question marks. My next player is also on the Toronto Raptors. It's OG Anunoby. Now,
at 4, wow. I'm surprised you don't have him higher. This is crazy.
I initially had him higher, but I'm factoring in the risks that this guy only has about 1 year left on his deal.
Yeah.
And then we heard, and there's been rumors between either that he's interested in the Pacers are interested, or they're both interested in each other. And I believe this probably was one of the guys that, Pritchard really went for at the trade deadline, but clearly they turned us down. Now, for OG, just about 1 year left on his deal because I believe he does turn down his player option. Toronto needs to make some changes. Jakob Poeltl, free agent. Fred VanVleet, they need to re-sign. Gary Trent Jr., I don't know what you're going to do there. But I do believe OG wants to come to the Pacers, and I think that the Pacers want him here. However, here's the thing. I mean, this is a player who's probably going to be on the all-defensive first team, if not second. I think that, here's a couple. I was looking at some stats. He held Kevin Durant to 19 points on one game. Kawhi Leonard to 10 points. James Harden, 19. Bradley Beal, 6 points. These are all on sub 40% shooting. I mean, this guy makes his money on the defensive side while also giving you good offensive output. But I do fear that I don't want the Pacers to go all in on a guy that they could potentially sign in free agency just about 1 year later when we're not going to win a championship next year. So that's why I'm torn. That's why I got him at number 4.
The reason you go after him this year is he does have the player option. And if he does like being a part of this team and like playing with Tyrese Halliburton, maybe he opts in. Maybe he opts out, but at least you have his bird rights at this point, so you can offer him more than any other team can offer him. And that's why you consider it. Now, look, I understand that OG Anunoby, I put out a very hot take tweet.
That was pretty hot.
I wouldn't trade Andrew Nembhard for him because of those circumstances. I think that you have to really put that into consideration, though, because with the steps T.J. McConnell took as a player this year, I still wonder, do the Pacers think maybe Nembhard's our best chip to get a player like this? So I'm just throwing that out there. I'm not saying you want to get rid of Andrew Nembhard. I still believe in Andrew Nembhard as a really awesome player. So I would love to cross that bridge a little bit later and think about it. But that's my initial thought was I don't think I want to do that. But I have OG a little bit higher, and I'll talk about him more. But for me, number 4 is another player that is on a very friendly deal, and he didn't have a great place in Brooklyn once he was traded from Dallas, and that's Dorian Finney-Smith. Player option in 2026. He's already played with Rick Carlisle. I think that we saw how impactful he can be when you have a heliocentric type guard with the ball in their hands and Luka Doncic. I think that if he gets someone like Tyrese Halliburton with him, he's going to have a better chance. I mean, no offense to the point guards right now currently in Brooklyn, but they are not on the same level as Luka or even Tyrese Halliburton. So when you're talking about a guy that can defend, I think he's making like $13 million over the next couple of years, like 13 whatever per year. So it's not going to be hard to salary match. And what in the world are the Brooklyn Nets doing with this roster? Are they just finishing out the season, then going to blow it up? They have a ton of trade assets on this roster, and they could really do a nice rebuild if they wanted to go this route. And I think the Pacers would be smart enough and really strategically, if they could get Dorian Finney-Smith at $13 million, they could literally just trade one of their key players or key rookie contract assets that they have, as well as a pick in the future or a pick they have this season for him. Because I don't think Finney-Smith, I understand that he was included with this big pick, right? From Dallas to go to Brooklyn, right? But I think at the end of the day, he's a guy that could be available, Facci.
He very well could be available. I went back and forth on him. I could definitely see, where you're going with that. I think that Dorian Finney-Smith would help any team, and he's actually a big reason why Dallas really crumbled, because defensively, what he was bringing to the table, they had no one else to fill that after trading Finney-Smith. So that is what the Pacers need. So maybe that's someone that should have cracked my list, but I could definitely see why you like him.
I think he should have probably, especially with some of the names I've heard. I think that it's not, to me, super unrealistic, because it's not like you're asking for like the best player on a team or the second best player. He's probably their third or fourth best player right now, and that's pretty much stretching it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I really don't know where he fits right now with Brooklyn's team and their future, but he is a little bit older. I think he's close to 30 if he's not 30 already.
Yeah. He's either 29 or 30.
And the other thing is, I just feel like with his experience last year in the playoffs, playing in some big games, we saw him play well in those games. And that's what excites me, is just knowing a guy can show up when it matters the most. And we just need more playoff experience on this roster if we want to make sure that we are going to be a playoff team next year.
No, we definitely do. And to the one point that you made about what Brooklyn going to do, are they going to blow it up or not? The reason why they can't is because the Rockets own their picks.
Right. And that's why they have to, that's why I think they could make some big trades to go out and get more picks from other teams.
And they've already started that. When they made the move for, trading Kevin Durant, they got some more picks, and they've done some other things like that, but they are stuck in a very strange spot. Now,
especially with Ben Simmons, just going to say.
Exactly. I mean, that is a whole other situation. I'm very happy the Pacers dodged that one. Next on my list, Jonathan Kuminga. Now,
yeah, I figured he'd make your list.
I've always been intrigued. Golden State gave up on Jonathan Wiseman, who they picked second overall.
James Wiseman.
What did I say?
Jonathan Wiseman.
Oh, well, James Wiseman for sure, but he might as well be Jonathan Wiseman, the way that, he hasn't lived up to potential. But look, the reason is because their tax bill is insane.
It's insane.
And it really is. Now, you also got to factor in Andrew Wiggins' contract extension about to kick in. Okay. Well, Klay Thompson and Draymond Green are both entering the final year of their deals. You imagine probably Klay gets re-signed. Don't know about Draymond, but even then it's going to get so expensive for them. So it feels like someone's got to go. And I feel like Kuminga is that player that they could still get very good value to continue to keep their championship window alive. But that window is getting it's almost like a little bit of a breeze is coming through there instead of the full action. They got to, if they want to make noise and bring in someone that can keep that window alive for years, Kuminga might be the one that is expendable for assets. He's just 20 years old, and I do think he would be a top 5 pick in this draft class. He was a 7th overall pick just a few years ago, but I feel like this is someone that would flourish with Tyrese Halliburton. And when I think of players whose best basketball is ahead of him, he's one of the top names that comes to mind.
Okay, I knew you were going to have him on your list, so I didn't even add him on my list because of that. I definitely throw him in there as an honorable mention. I just wonder, what do the Warriors do with Draymond? If Draymond's on the outs, there's no way they can get rid of Kuminga. I think he's not going to play the same role, obviously, but it's tough. We'll see what happens with Golden State. I think they're a very interesting team to monitor. And if you listened at all to, I want to say it was Bill Simmons had on Brian Windhorst on his podcast. I think Windhorst kept bringing up the fact that Steve Kerr is, coaching the 2024 Olympic team, and that he's only got like 2 years left on his contract. So like maybe after that he could be done. So
Could be.
I don't know why Windhorst would just kind of keep throwing that out there if he didn't have some kind of hunch that maybe Kerr's thinking about retiring from coaching, but I think that could change a lot. That's going on in Golden State right now. So we'll see what happens there. Now I'm going with my biggest, probably unrealistic name on the list right here now, Facci, at number 3. We're going to New Orleans. We're visiting a team down there that really has just underwhelmed after being the number 1 seed at one point this year in the Western Conference to falling to the play-in tournament. And you might be thinking I'm going after a guy that, maybe set out, but I'm not. I'm going after his running mate, and that's Brandon Ingram. I think Brandon Ingram should be a very high target for the Indiana Pacers. He's got I think he's making like $25 million right now as a rookie extension. It's not even that much. And when you look at Brandon Ingram as an overall player, the guy's a stud. And I think that the Pelicans are probably kicking themselves for not including him in a trade for Kevin Durant, because I think that they have a nice surrounding group around him. But the problem is I think Brandon Ingram's going to get frustrated. And I think Brandon Ingram, similar to Anthony Davis, is going to want himself out of there. They don't have, to me, a point guard at the same level of Tyrese Halliburton, CJ McCollum. I think that might have been a little bit too much of a overpay for him. I like CJ, but I think he's got too many holes in his game. Don't feel like Valanciunas was involved as much. And like, what's going on with Zion? Is he ever going to get healthy? I mean, I want to root for Zion. I want him to do well, Foch. I don't want anything but great for him. But at this point, I mean, if you're a player that's playing with him and like you kind of called him out in a press conference saying that, guys got to hold themselves accountable, whatever. I mean, I'm just saying, to me, Brandon Ingram fits this team perfectly. I think next to Miles, Benedict, and Tyrese, and even Andrew, you could see a closing 5 there that could be pretty talented. I do love his shot making, his defensive potential. So I'm pretty enticed by it. Now, he is an unrestricted free agent in 2025, so he's only got 2 years left on his deal, and this might be the right time for New Orleans to look to move him, especially if he's unhappy and requests a trade.
Yeah, I mean, I know I've said it before, but that's another name I went back and forth on. And I felt like I love what he did. He's always been a really good scorer. Always. Yeah. Dating back to Duke, number 2 overall pick. He's always been able to score, but he's gotten better and better scoring, distributing. This year, career high assist-wise. I like what he brings to the table. I just felt like, man, if you're going to go all in, like, where's the defense going to come from?
Yeah.
And I just felt like that's something that the Pacers need to get better on. So that's why I struggled there, because I felt that if you do give New Orleans whatever they ask to give up, you could say Zion's their franchise guy, but Ingram's been the guy that actually is available for the last few years. So I knew it would cost a lot. But look, if the Pacers were ever to pull off that trade, I would be very excited.
What did Kevin Pritchard say, though? He's itching to make a trade.
Itching, literally. If you're watching on YouTube, I mean, I don't know if he's got lice or whatever it may be, the chicken pox, this guy is itching to make a deal, and I'm excited for that. So, we go off to stay tuned. Next on my list, the name that we discussed earlier, it's Obi Toppin. I can't get him out of my head. I cannot get him off my mind. I think in New York, he's always just going to be Julius Randle's backup.
Yep.
Playing 16 to 20 minutes a night. And I know I'm biased, and I brought him up earlier because I love the man. I'm getting Jermaine O'Neal type vibes of a player that was a backup 4 just on the bench for years. And when I think he goes to his next home, I think a guy like Obi Toppin could be potentially one of those most improved candidate players. I really do. And when you look at the Knicks, they've only re-signed 1 draft pick dating back to the early 90s. That's R.J. Barrett. So, I mean, look, it's R.J. Barrett, and then I think it was Chris Childs like 25 years ago. So I think when you look at this, where New York's going, trying to compete with the upper echelon of the league, I don't think Obi Toppin fits in their plans. And plus, he's got 1 more year left on his contract before I believe he's a restricted free agent. I just feel that now is the time for them to make a move. And I already talked about it. He dropped 32. on the Pacers on 11 of 18 shooting. He dropped 34 on 13 of 23 shooting. It felt like an audition. And you know what? He passed with flying colors for the role as an Indiana Pacer.
Yeah, no, I think Obi Toppin's a very intriguing player as well, Facci. Obviously, I had him on my list. So not going to say anything there, but I'm going to go back to somebody we brought up earlier. 16.8 points per game, 5.0 rebounds, 2 assists, 1.9 steals, almost a block per game. Toronto Raptor, OG Anunoby from Indiana University. I just feel like with what Kevin Pritchard said, number one, about going out and making a couple of offers or, during the trade deadline, the rumors about OG whispering to Tyrese Halliburton, and then hearing Kevin Pritchard on the radio talking about going after somebody. Jake Query said, "Who was it?" He said, "I can't tell you that." Kevin Bowen then said, is his name OG Anunoby, essentially. He kind of worded it a little differently, just being funny. And Pritchard said, well, he seems to fit the profile, that's for sure. So I think Pritchard basically was telling us that they went after OG. And I think that OG Anunoby would be a perfect fit here in Indiana. So, like I said, I would love to revisit this a little bit later in the offseason and kind of do more of a breakdown on OG Anunoby as a player overall and what I'd be willing to give up for him. But I just think he's exactly what they need. He is what you would consider a hybrid. He plays the 3 and the 4. He can be a true power forward, I think, with the way the modern NBA is going. So give me OG Anunoby at number 2. But Facci, let me hear your number 1.
Number 1, I got a man that you made fun of me last time for, or even earlier in this episode, but I'm putting some respect on his name this time. It's Jaden McDaniels. Alex, I'm not done with it. I don't know what it's going to cost. I don't. But when you look at Minnesota's roster, Rudy Gobert is absolutely paid. Karl Anthony Towns, beyond paid. Anthony Edwards, very much paid. Where's the money coming from? How are they going to be able to re-sign Jaden McDaniels when the time comes? I don't know what his ballpark is, but I do feel that you're talking about one of the best defensive players in the league. That is exactly where the Pacers need help. He could defend multiple positions. I'm very intrigued with what he's also. I think he's a growing offensive player who's extremely efficient from the field. I love that. And I think that I've said it before, his best basketball is yet to come. This man is just 22 years old, fits this core perfectly. I do not know what it will take, but I know one team that's strapped for cash and draft picks. And I know another team that's got picks for days. And Jaden McDaniels, I think, is a player that can make a big difference on the Indiana Pacers.
If you're running the Minnesota Timberwolves, let me ask you this. Who is the number 1 player that you're not trading on that team?
I'd say Anthony Edwards.
Okay, I would agree with you. Who's number 2?
I mean, clearly you're probably looking to say Jaden McDaniels. And I look, at this point.
Would you rather have Karl Anthony Towns or Jaden McDaniels?
It's tough. They haven't won anything with Towns. They haven't. He's been a really good player, but they just have not. It has not translated to winning.
No, I agree with you. I personally just think that Jaden McDaniels is probably their second best asset on that team right now.
He very well could be. I think when you combine age, contract value, like right around there, everything, defensive capabilities, you could definitely make that argument.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm just saying, like, it's going to be tough to get him because, like, what do we have that they don't besides Tyrese? And I'm not giving up Tyrese for him.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, and I'm not. And they don't really need Matherin because they've already got Anthony Edwards. So is Andrew Nembhard going to be enough to get Jaden McDaniels?
No, you'd have to. It would be numerous first round picks. That's absolutely in there.
I just wonder how they're going about because obviously they went all in for Rudy Gobert, kind of tipping their hand. They kind of tipped their hand and said we're all in for this, and I don't think Rudy Gobert is like even a tradable asset. I think he's a negative asset no matter what.
He's most definitely a negative asset right now.
Yep. Yeah, they've got a weird team, and I think they kind of just have to stick it out. That's why I didn't even touch him because yes, I clearly want him, but I don't see any cracks in the holes that would allow us to kind of go deep, to jump in there and steal him out. But I do like him as a player. You know that's how I feel about him. So. For your number 1, that was a little bit shocking. I forgot that you mentioned him earlier at the beginning of the podcast that you liked him. So that is funny that's kind of how you wrap things up here. But for me, Facci, I'm going for a guy that already got traded this season, during the season. I've already mentioned this team once. It's Dorian Finney-Smith's teammate, Mikal Bridges. The Pacers were rumored to go after 2 players, made 2 big offers. I think my number one and my number two were both of the people the Pacers went after, OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges. Now, trust me, I understand that it's going to be hard to get him away from Brooklyn because Brooklyn, like you said, they traded a lot of their picks. They went all in for James Harden. That didn't work out. The Ben Simmons trade has not worked out for them as well. Kyrie, they got some decent assets back for him. They got some pretty good assets back for Kevin Durant. But I just feel like this is a team that's very hard to figure out. Mikal Bridges is under contract till 25, 26, and he's going to making 21 this year in 2022, 2023, but next year, 21.7, the year after, 23.3, the year after that, 24.9. This guy is on a steal of a contract. He is arguably a top 10 two-way player in today's NBA. I think we've seen incredible growth from him this season as more than just a 3-and-D type of guy. And I think that he would fit perfectly with Rick Carlisle and Tyrese Halliburton. So I don't know exactly what it would cost. I don't even know if he is available, but I'm picking up the phone every day until Brooklyn decides, you know what, we're not even answering your phone anymore. I'm getting Dorian Finney-Smith first, if I can, and then I'm calling Mikal Bridges. I think if you could land both those guys or just one of those guys, but especially Mikal, that's the guy you have to go after. And that is someone I would easily be willing to give up Andrew Nembhard for. I would even consider, this is going to be a hot take, I would consider trading Ben Mathurin for him.
Here's the thing. You would have to, because I went back and forth, and I'm in 100% agreement with you. I think he would be the perfect player to add to this team. And maybe this is a hot take. I thought he was, upon getting traded to Brooklyn, I thought he was one of the best players in the league when he came over there. I mean, in the month of March, I'm looking at it now, he averaged 29 points per game on 50% shooting, 43% from three. You know, he was a totally different player. Yeah. And it really looked like he was held back in Phoenix because of, you know, the player Devin Booker. You got Chris Paul, you got DeAndre Ayton. Two-way player, just like you mentioned. I truly think he is going to be not only an all-star next year, I think he's going to be becoming a star in this league. And I think that we heard, maybe you mentioned, maybe it was the Pacers, I don't know, that they were offered 4 first-round picks after trading for Bridges. So when I looked at this, I was just like, man, the fact that Brooklyn owes their picks to Houston, I was like, I don't know what scenario. I think they build around Bridges because he is under contract. So if there was any scenario that he was available, I'm in. But you tell me this, who's harder to get, Bridges or Jaden McDaniels?
Well, I definitely think Bridges is harder to get, but who changes your franchise more? McDaniels is fine, but he's not even on the same level as Bridges. So when I'm talking about, completely agree. I told you I was going big name hunting. I wasn't kidding.
I mean, this is big name hunting.
I didn't go realistic trade deadline. So if I'm thinking, okay, the Pacers want to make a big swing, they want to get in the playoffs. Does adding Obi Toppin really get you to the playoffs? Potentially, but how much more? I mean, I'm saying you got to go out there and get some defensive studs. And I don't know if Obi Toppin's a defensive stud or not.
No.
I haven't watched enough New York to really say that. I think that he does a good job in the system. But I know that Mikal Bridges is a defensive stud. And Absolutely. I know that OG Anunoby is. I know Pascal Siakam can be. I know Dorian Finney-Smith can be. And that's why I went after the names that I put down, because that's what I believe in. So, you know, that to me is where you really have to value both sides of the basketball, because I think Jaden McDaniels, while he's a great defender, he's got a lot of work to grow offensively. And he could take another step. We're not saying
I think he does.
I like him a lot. I really do. I told you I've been a big fan of McDaniels brothers for a long time. And if you saw my mock draft that I did with Mavs draft, I took the third McDaniels brother and Taylor Hendricks, you know? So if the Pacers get Taylor Hendricks and Mikal Bridges to go with Halliburton and Turner, I think you feel really good about the future of your team. But I mean, I don't like even throwing in the idea of trading Ben Mathurin, but at this point, I think if you're really trying to take that next step and you think that you can get a player like Bridges, who, I don't know, it's tough to say right now, but I think you'd have to say that his ceiling is probably higher than Mathurin's at this point.
I would.
Especially with the defensive upside, the long arms that he has, the shooting ability. I mean, we've seen it enough. So I'm not saying I want to trade Mathurin. I know you got to get out of here, Facci, so I'm trying to hustle. But this to me is just like one of those players that if I have any chance to get him, I probably consider all my options.
Yeah, and I hate what Rudy Gobert trade did to the NBA.
Yeah.
Because now you look at a player like Bridges and you got to be thinking, okay, this is going to be, potentially 5 first-round picks or involving pick swaps. Because this is also a guy that they just traded Kevin Durant for, and got picks with him. So it's just like, man, I mean, there was Cam Johnson thrown there also, but it's just like, it really feels like with the Nets not owning their own first-round picks for the next few years, they trade Bridges, they're bottoming out, and they're risking giving up top picks. So that combination just makes it seem like hey, you know what? They're going to build around him. But I agree with your point. If there's any scenario to go all in, that's the type of guy you go all in on, who's signed under contract for a couple of seasons, a fantastic two-way player who, obviously was already a really good defender. I think last year might have been the runner-up for Defensive Player of the Year, or definitely top 3. And now this guy's dropping 40 on some nights. It's just, there's so much to like, but man, it just felt like such a dream when I was going through. How could we do it? But
and that's why I didn't say it was realistic. I just said these are my targets, and that's what I'm targeting. You're you put your darts out, or you put your dartboard up, and you throw your darts at it. This is a guy that I'm going for, and even if he is the bullseye, the hardest part of the board to hit, I'm trying to see how close I can get. And like you said, he becomes unrestricted in the summer of 2026. So you'd have him for 3 seasons for sure before he's a free agent. And I think that who knows what could happen in the East in 3 years, or what other players you could add. But his contract is so team friendly right now. Pair that with Miles' contract that's team friendly. That Halliburton extension kicks in. I mean, it seems like a really nice fit. But one more time, go ahead and read your list from 10 to 1 real quick so everybody knows one more time who you had.
All right, so Alex, this time I numbered it. I ran into that in the past, and I won't do it again. But here's what I got. Number 10, Kelly Olynyk. Number 9, Kyle Anderson. Number 8, Alex Caruso. Number 7, Bobby Portis. Number 6, Patrick Williams. Number 5, DeAndre Hunter. Number 4, OG Anunoby. Number 3, Jonathan Kuminga. Number 2, Obi Toppin. Number 1, Jaden McDaniels.
Okay, for me, number 10, I had 10A, 10B, Tobias Harris, Gordon Hayward. Number 9, Patrick Williams. Number 8, DeAndre Hunter. Number 7, Obi Toppin. Number 6, Andrew Wiggins. Number 5, Pascal Siakam. Number 4, Dorian Finney-Smith. Number 3, Brandon Ingram. Number 2, OG Anunoby. And number 1, Mikal Bridges. Any honorable mentions that we did not bring up?
Well, the honorable mentions that I mentioned before was I had Tobias Harris in there. He was definitely my number 1 honorable mention. And then other ones, I mean, I definitely kicked the tires on Brandon Ingram pretty hard.
Okay, what about John Collins? Are you still into him or no?
So Collins off my list. I had him on there. Well, look, at one point this list was this long, but I took him off because I looked at it. He still owed about $78 million moving forward. I don't know. He'll get better, because this was definitely a bad year for him compared to his usual John Collins standards. And then I looked at it and I was like, you know what? If it's going to take potentially multiple picks or anything like that, I just don't think that's the guy that you really want to push the chips in on and think that you're a much better team.
Yeah, I think his shooting has just dipped so much too that I don't trust it. And that's my biggest concern with him. But another name I put on my honorable mention, Facci, because he's kind of been unhappy, it seems like, at least with his future in this destination. And he probably would have been in my top 3 if this was the case. Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown basically said if he makes all NBA, that he's going to re-sign with Boston. But if not, he's an unrestricted free agent next year, or has a player option. So it's like, this is a guy that, you'd have to be really interested in. But the reason I took him off is because I don't see Boston trading him to Indiana, because they want to win now, and there's nothing we can really offer them that helps them win now. So that's why I was looking at teams that might be going more rebuild mode, or guys that could force their way out of a bad situation. So that's the reason I did not put him on this list. I would say the only one I probably put on here that isn't in like a rebuilding mode is potentially Andrew Wiggins. So So that's kind of where I'm with that. But with that being said, Facci, I got nothing else. I think this was a fun exercise. If there's any players I guess we didn't mention, please comment below in the YouTube section or message us on social media. Say, hey, I thought about this guy. What do you think about him? I wanted him. We'll do a mailbag podcast coming up to wrap the month up with soon. But anything else, Facci?
No, I would just say to your Jaylen Brown point, someone that I was like, oh, man, this would be amazing. But, like, I just don't think we have the trade package for it because Boston,
Nah.
to your point, they don't want picks right now.
No.
What they want is an NBA championship.
So they
So
don't want rookies either. I mean, if you could literally offer them Ben Mather and all these picks, and it might be the sexiest deal out there, but are they going to want to sit back and take a 4 to 5 year, step back, I guess you could say, from contention? No, they want to win with Jason Tatum.
This is their time right now. So
Yeah.
completely agree with you. This was fun. And everybody who's listening, hey, chime in if you were like, I absolutely have no interest in this guy, or wow, we got to move him up higher. Unless we want to hear from you guys. So please chime in with your thoughts, because this is going to be a fun offseason. And with the cap flexibility and the draft picks that we have, you really can't say that we can't get a deal done for a large chunk of these players.
Yeah, and I want to make sure that I'm clear. I'm not trying to trade Ben Mather and people. I'm not actively giving like the go for like, let's get rid of Mathurin if we can. No, I would say he's your number 2 asset on this team. And if you want to go big name hunting, you got to give up something. And so we saw what happened when the Pacers gave up his bonus. They got Halliburton. You got to make those kind of risk. You have to give up potentially what was known at that point your best player for probably not Sacramento's best player at the time. But it made more sense to do that deal because of what Halliburton means to the team. So I just think you kind of have to swallow hard sometimes and just make a tough decision. And that's what Kevin Pritchard is paid millions of dollars to do. And it's not easy to sell a fan base on trading a rookie, but you never know what kind of player you're getting back in return. So you just got to keep all your options open if you really want to make Tyrese happy and really give Rick a potential roster to compete in the playoffs.
Absolutely.
Tell the people where they can find us at, Facci.
Absolutely. You can find us on Twitter at Setting the Pace 3. You can find Alex on Twitter at AlexGoldenNBA. I can be found on Twitter at _FACCI. You can find us on Instagram at Pacers Talk. You can find us on Facebook at Setting the Pace. You can find us on TikTok at Setting the Pace. And Alex, tell them where they can check us out on YouTube.
Ladies and gentlemen, go to youtube.com/Setting the Pace, a Pacers podcast, where you can watch this video and more. We just uploaded an episode with Facci and Richard Stamen from Locked On Big Board, or I guess NBA Big Board, whatever it is. I forget the title of that podcast, but Mavs Draft on Twitter. I was just part of his mock draft, community mock draft, representing the Indiana Pacers. It was a lot of fun. So make sure you all go check that out, subscribe, and be on the lookout for more content coming to our Substack. I was not able to get that article written yet, but I'm working on my top 10 Pacers big board for this upcoming draft, so keep an eye on that. But Facci, if you're excited that the Pacers have a better chance of landing in the draft lottery now since they won the coin flip against the Washington Wizards, then hit me with those 3 words.
Let's go, Pacers!
Setting the pace, going to the top. Setting the pace, going to the top. This is your number 1 podcast. Sweeping every team. We gon' need a mop. Smooth.
Baby.